Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. And now the Friday Crime Report. Millville, Delaware, February 14th, 2024. Around dinner time at the Millville Volunteer Fire Department, a black employee was on his way to an outdoor grill at the fire company. He had been with the department for 3 years already and was very dedicated. In fact, on the night in question, he was working overtime on a shift that he wasn't even regularly scheduled for. As he was walking out, he saw 2 white fire department employees, 27-year-old Jay Droney and 23-year-old Jordan Hastings, practicing tying knots. But it wasn't a knot at all. It was actually a noose that they were forming. While grilling, the man said Droney walked out a side door swinging the noose. "Come here, boy," court documents claim Droney told the man before beginning to chase him. As Droney pursued him, court documents say the victim noticed Hastings was videoing this incident. Following the chase, Droney began laughing and walked back inside the firehouse. After this incident, Droney sent a Snapchat video of this incident to a friend of his. Court documents say that Droney continued to harass the victim following this incident, calling the man racial slurs and talking about cotton fields in front of him. It took more than a year for this hate crime to come to light. Part of the delay, according to court documents, was because the victim didn't report the incident because he just wanted to come to work and do his job and go home. But on April 9th of this year, the victim arrived at work and a conversation started about how Droney had written a letter to the newspaper and the fire company claiming the department was doing a lot of suspicious things. That's when the victim said, "What about all the things Jay has done to me?" He then told his co-workers about what had happened. The victim also revealed the existence of the Snapchat video. Now, the third party, whoever it was that received this video, had actually saved it. Both Droney and Hastings accused that third party, whoever they are, of having been involved in the incident. The third party insisted that he was off duty that night, and he also says he heard Droney making racial slurs toward the victim and that the victim allegedly brushed it off. And we can all safely assume that the existence of this video is the reason that the authorities suspended these 2 criminals and notified the police, even though it still took a week between the time the department found out about it and finally taking action. Hastings reported to the Delaware State Police for an interview. During the interview, Hastings tried to dismiss the incident as just a joke, and he even tried to claim that they hadn't tied a noose, but instead it was a fireman's knot. But investigators wrote that the video clearly showed Droney carrying a noose. Hastings admitted to having videoed the hate crime, but claimed that he didn't remember which one of them tied the noose. And then, according to court documents, he began changing his story before telling the police he was done talking until he had an attorney. Droney and Hastings were arrested and have each been charged with a single count of felony hate crime, felony second-degree conspiracy, and harassment. Notice, though, that it didn't take the authorities a year or even months to charge these guys. The existence of that videotape was what put a fire under their behinds, and that's how we know that whatever it is on there has to be pretty disturbing. This means they verified that the video exists, and they didn't want anyone to be seeing it. That's the only reason they would have moved this quickly. They're trying to bury it. By pretending to be taking prompt action, why, see, we put a hate crime charge on these guys, so you can't claim we didn't do it. But of course, we all know the white privilege 2-step. They'll downgrade the charges later on after the headlines fade away, and then they'll later suggest some slap-on-the-wrist penalty. That train's never late. Not surprisingly, these 2 degenerates have already been released. Now keep in mind, these 2 are a late millennial and a Gen Zer, respectively. They're not boomers or even Gen Xers. These are 2 punks under the age of 30. One of them isn't even 25 yet. And look at what these 2 animals are doing. Degenerates like this don't just appear in a vacuum. The white men who run that sewer calling itself a fire department, they were surely aware of these 2's behavior beforehand and no doubt approved of it. These 2 certainly wouldn't have tried a stunt like this if they thought that the leadership wouldn't approve. And of course, we have to mention that Delaware is the state that Jim Crow Joe Biden represented when he was in the Senate. And as he himself admitted, Delaware allied itself with the Confederacy during the Civil War. Well, as we can see, they're still at it. We'll continue with the Moment of Truth in just a moment, but first, a word from the official sponsor of Black Empowerment, Power Tools. There's no telling when something's going to come up, so make sure you carry your power tools at all times. You never know when you're going to need to bring the hammer down, or when you'll have some trash that needs to be blown away, or some obstacle that requires cutting down. Don't get caught empty-handed. Keep your hammer close by. Keep that leaf blower at the ready. And always carry your steel. Power tools. Because no matter what your day job or side hustle may be, there's no excuse for not being ready to put in some work. Now there's also two other points that have to be made. At the risk of sounding like I'm victim blaming, the reality happens to be the victim in this case was trying to brush this stuff off, laugh it off, otherwise trying to pretend as if it wasn't happening. Denial is a hell of a drug, and it can also be fatal if you overdose on it. Now we know the reason that this person was so reluctant to come forward with this incident is because the leadership, if it can be called that, at that fire department was surely friendly with these two racist scumbags. And because of that, obviously the victim understood that he's in a hostile environment. But that doesn't erase the fact that trying to laugh these incidents off or otherwise trying to brush them off or ignore them, that is inappropriate behavior. That is the wrong response to give. When dealing with white supremacists, you can't laugh it off or brush it off. These animals cannot be placated. They can only be confronted and defeated. When you don't confront these anti-black racists, you wind up emboldening them. That's exactly what happened. And speaking of useless and ineffective responses,
the Delaware NAACP plans to take action.
Is calling out leadership of our firehouse spaces, our elected officials, and other policymakers. We're going to be demanding statewide accountability. And I think that starts with some anti-racism training, some cultural reform, and really a top-down review of culture.
So here we go with the NAACP. These guys, the brainless moron drone robots that they are, they're just sitting here copying and pasting the same old stupid stuff that they say. We need to give these racists some sensitivity training. It's a problem of culture, a problem of culture. You cannot retrain a white supremacist. They can only be punished. But the NAACP, as usual, isn't concerned about that at all. They're too busy getting ready for their annual spring breakfast, which of course will be followed by their summer luncheon, and then their fall fish fry, and their winter brunch, etc. Again, I'm not blaming the victim here, but the truth of the matter happens to be that all of this trying to pretend is not as bad as all that, that's what made it where things got worse and worse and worse. And this incident also confirms for us that it's not just the thugs in blue who practice a rabid culture of anti-black racism. A lot of these fire departments are also sewers filled to the brim with anti-black racists too, and they also have to be confronted and defeated flat out. Speaking of which, when black people know that they're in a hostile environment, they have a right to defend themselves. And that being the case, no black person has any obligation to sit on their hands while they're being threatened, menaced, and having people making attempts on their lives. As black people, we have a right to be safe not just in our homes, but walking down the street, in public, and in the workplace. And if there's anyone who's going to decide that they're going to threaten our safety, we also have a right to defend ourselves, to whatever degree is necessary to ensure our safety. Racist incidents like this are the reason that we absolutely require an anti-black hate crime law specifically to protect us. Black people are the vast majority of hate crimes victims in America and always have been. And this is because the perpetrators are almost never charged with a hate crime that they've committed. This society protects them. Democrats had no problem ramrodding an Asian hate crime law through Congress, this while black people were in the streets protesting the murder of George Floyd. That's what they did in response to that. You see millions of black people and then millions of non-black people in the streets protesting the murders of black people at the hands of the police and other individuals. And the Democrats' response? Oh, don't worry about black people. We need to prioritize everybody else. This is why these hate crimes continue to happen. Because these things don't happen in a vacuum. Everyone, including the anti-black racists, the hate criminals, they are fully aware that the government itself is giving them tacit permission and support to commit their anti-black hate crimes. The government's refusal to talk about how black people are targeted and how the government goes out of their way to make sure they ignore us, these anti-black racists can see that, and that's what emboldens them. So the government is as complicit as the perpetrators. Democrat operatives like David Hogg don't talk about this, and that's why you see them trying to run up to everyone else for support. When it comes to policy demands from the black grassroots, an anti-black hate crime law is right up there with reparations. This is also a subject that the Democrats have to be pressured on, because they'll tell you all the time, reparations, oh, it's not feasible. That's what Bernie Sanders said. Then you start pressing them about an anti-black hate crime law. Then all of a sudden they start giving you all of that, shuffling their feet and looking down at the ground. That's what they did when it came time to talk about the George Floyd Policing Act. All of a sudden it's like, well, we can try to run it through Congress, but if only we can get it out of committee. And this is the reason why it makes no sense for black people to vote for the Democrats under these circumstances. They are completely and thoroughly unresponsive while we're being threatened and murdered in the streets. Delaware is Joe Biden's home state. He represented that toilet for 50 years, and now you see why. Let this stand as a reminder to you. These anti-black racists, they're not just over at the local car plant or at your call center or at the warehouse or what have you. These individuals are especially festering like vermin when it comes to these government offices. Well, you got people who are sitting here making attempts on black people's lives. Those black people have every right to use whatever means are required to ensure that they are not harmed. Someone calls themselves coming at you with a noose in the firehouse, then they shouldn't be surprised at all when they're the ones who wind up getting burned. And that's this week's Friday Crime Report. Keep your eyes open and stay on alert, because there's a lot worse criminals out there than the ones the white corporate media chooses to show you. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Zadik Bey, Isaac, Joseph Isaiah, Farrell Taylor, and Stephen Mayfield. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.